Hi. Are we okay? They got her, gal. Gay people who thought she was gonna break the Rusical curse? This one's for y'all. Hi, hello everyone, my name is Jer, and nothing sucks more than a friend with no gag reflex. Oh my god, my window's open. I don't need my neighbors hearing this shit. For episode 13 of season 18 of RuPaul's Drag Race, we are given a Karen acting challenge hot off of RuPaul's algorithm. Initially, I was pretty concerned about this challenge because I thought that Ru would be the improv partner that she usually is. Be a little less generous to certain queens that she doesn't like, be overly generous to the ones that she does like, be a little more helpful and a little funnier with certain performers, but that wasn't the case. She was genuinely funny every single scene. She was getting ready for this movie. And you know what? The trailer looks hilarious for Stop That Train. She was quite active and involved, shocking me, I'm not gonna lie. And this challenge comes off the heels of the worst puppet mini challenge of all time. The last time we saw the Everybody Loves Puppets mini challenge was in season 12, so it has been 6 US seasons since this has appeared. Of course, we've seen it on the international seasons and it's always hit and miss with those, but this is the first time that it's been back in the US in a long time. Girl, it is never coming back. You could see in real time the light leave Ru's eyes. Here's my thing. I don't think that this group is boring or lacks personality or doesn't have anything you can latch onto to generate some interesting comedy. I don't think they had an inability to be funny in this challenge. I think the modern Ru queens are way too self-aware of the cameras around them. I think they're afraid to be potentially shady or upset the lunatic fan base that are out there who will come for them on social media because they cannot separate the TV show from the contestants who have real lives outside of that show, something that was filmed almost a year ago. And you can kind of see that Darlene started strong and then very quickly the light began to fade. Those gears were turning and I could almost see her brain saying, how do I say this in a way that won't get clipped out of context? And I think that's ultimately the problem. Far too many queens are afraid to express themselves and say the things that they want to say, or maybe be a little shady in the right way because it could be completely misinterpreted. And that's upsetting to me. This had every opportunity to be extremely hilarious, and it wasn't. They all lost this challenge, but the real losers were the crew members who had to perceive this whole debacle and see the entire unedited version, and they will never get that time back. And so they were given the prize that they can all divide among themselves as a little holiday bonus. It reminded me of Drag Race Down Under season 3, where the reading challenge was so bad that the pit crew won a big supply of glitter and got to assign the girl group order. These challenges where someone who's not the queen wins bring me life, but also, yikes! Also, there was this one mustached crew member who had a mullet, and he was so fine for no reason. The puppet challenge is so cooked. This has to be the reason why they're specifically casting for comedy and improv queens for season 19. Ru saw this back again and was like, no, we need to get some funny bitches back up in here.
Oh, wait a minute, bitches.
Before I get into my placements for this week, I want to acknowledge that Discord's mirror message said, eat the rich, Black Lives Matter, and protect trans lives, but they kept that out of the edit. So that's f***ed. This season is probably the most progressive of everyone that has come before it. They let Jane say f***. They showed piss kink this week on the runway. They showed poppers and openly talked about them without cutting that content. There have been a couple other things this season that they've brought up or done that I'm like, whoa, this is so abnormal for usually how PG and family friendly Drag Race is. But letting Nani say, eat the rich, Black Lives Matter, and protect trans lives is apparently way too scandalous, and they couldn't include that in the edit. So let's get into my placements. And I have to say, I will give props where they are due. These were all practical sets. There was not a lick of green screen to be found. And each set had tremendous amounts of detail that were created for them, and so I super appreciated that. Green screen challenges drive me up the wall, and I did not believe that we would get a practical set for Drag Race, but we did for RDR, and now we got them here. I love it. This show makes enough money. They do not need to be investing in green screen challenges. In my first position is Juicy Love Dion. Girl, second week in a row that I fully believe that she was snubbed of a win. I can't. The central storyline of season 18 has been the Dion dynasty, starting with Athena walking in the workroom, setting up that her granddaughter Juicy was a force. Mia and Athena going home in succession to support that Juicy was the endgame player, that she was going to carry on their torch to the finale. They invested that time into Juicy at the beginning, giving her that random bogus RDR win. They strung her along for so many episodes and gave her this "we don't know you" story so that she would emerge. They challenged her to be goofy, to let loose. And then they constantly snubbed Mikey out of wins by giving these huge misdirects of her having connections with Rue, having connections on the main stage, and then not getting that win and looking very upset about it, getting that bogus bottom placement in the talent show. They were putting all of their eggs in the Juicy basket, only to now, in the last couple episodes, where she has done everything they wanted to see, giving that perfect branding in the makeover challenge, making her partner feel the fantasy and being so supportive and not getting a win, and then this week completely breaking out and showing her true self behind that veneer of who we perceive as Juicy Love Dion. She was daring, she was free, and then dust. What was the point in stringing her through this many episodes to do nothing with her when the time came? They did the same thing with Kenya. And you know what? We're gonna stop my placements now because this is now commentary on season 18. Why did they string Jane along for 13 episodes? Hi, to give her as well the "we don't want to play with you" edit anymore. They gave all those misdirects for Mikey to then suddenly start investing in her at the end. They gassed up Nani in the beginning of the season, only to start ignoring her at the end of the competition. They didn't understand Darlene, and I still don't think they do. They haven't quite come full circle with her. They get her one week and then they don't get her the other. This season has quite literally no idea what to do with itself, and not to give it another mention, but it is so down under season 3, where I think these queens are not providing a lot of drama. They're not providing a lot of angst. And so the editors don't really know how to navigate around that. They're so used towards a very specific type of cast that is giving a level of tension and drama and activation in the room that when a group comes in and they're all kind of copacetic with each other, they don't know how to manufacture the season or how to create proper storylines. In Down Under 3, the prime agitator was Ivory Glaze, and the moment that they had a chance to get rid of her, they did. In this season, Briar Blush was the primary agitator, and they got rid of her immediately. They're actually almost parallel lines to each other. And Jane was like the Hollywood going home. This week, Jane flubbed in that puppet challenge and then flubbed in the challenge, and I think Rue was just so upset about that he gave her the boot. But the difference is that we don't have an Isis Avis Loren this season. Oh God, does that make Darlene Gabriella? Anyways, I think the editors have quite literally no idea how to navigate around this season. Anyway, back to Juicy, who is still in my top placement. She was playing Parking Stop Karen. I loved her playing full Latina, leaning into that wholeheartedly, and overall, I found her incredibly funny. You're being very rude. I'm gonna call my husband. Oh, she nailed that. She nailed that. Period. It was so good. She was hysterical. I and Rue were very nervous that Juicy was not gonna be able to work it out here, that this would be a stumble and she would get the chop. But she was so free and less rigid. She proved that she is that bitch. And she delivered on what they've been asking of her, which was to be free of this facade. I genuinely laughed from the moment that she tumbled over that railing to that very last frame. She was incredible. And on the runway, the category is from wholesome to fulsome. This runway is for every single Drag Race queen globally who did a pope or religious figure to a slut. I'm looking at you, Hanaconda. I'm looking at you, Lady Keto. I want to say that Kimmy Couture did something like that as well. And I'm sure that there are more and will be more. I enjoyed Juicy's irreverence to Alice in Wonderland. Every single rave ever will feature some diva in a blonde wig and a blue dress, a white apron, and they're like, "I'm Alice." And then they've got their either slutty friend who's with them as the Cheshire Cat or the slutty Mad Hatter. So it was all very raver, and it was a fun concept that was well executed. It's a super slay. She should have won last week and she should have won this week. Clock that. In my second position is Mikey Meeks as Traffic Stop Karen. We're she deserves a lot of credit was the fact that she was essentially stationary in that car for the majority of the scene. And she had to be active, not get stagnant in her energy, and find ways to keep levels going. And I think she maintained that in a lot of different ways, not limited to, but specifically in her physical comedy. That leaning in on her fist was so belittling when she laid back in the chair and said something like, "I'm gonna take a nap." That was so funny and bonkers. I loved how difficult and entitled she was. She had some great levels, and once again, I think that she knocked it out of the park when it came to her comedy. I think this would have been an interesting parallel to the RDR challenge, where she did great as that role in the Michelle skit, but Juicy snagged up the win. Her character was well developed. She had that misplaced righteous indignation that all Karens have, and I immensely appreciate that her source of inspiration was that candle vlogger who talked about the Appleton store not having winter candy apple. That woman also inspired Jennifer of the hit TV show Scream Queens, otherwise known as Candle Vlogger. What a fantastic deep cut reference. I fully intended to lip sync to that entire monologue one night for one of my drag numbers, and it just never came to fruition because I couldn't figure out what song to put with it. But in any case, I was obsessed with that video so bad. I was obsessed with the reference. It was a great choice. And I think she nailed that energy. Someone who is just so stuffed with their own sauce and does not comprehend that others around them are not consuming that same sauce. For her wholesome to fulsome runway, she started in this elegant and whimsical red rose inspired gown. She pricks her finger and then reveals into a harnessy. Not my words, that's what it sounded like.
Harnessy.
It's a bit simple, but I don't hate it. What I will say is the pieces seem a bit oversized for her petite body. It probably needed a little bit of tailor before it hit her suitcase, but it's a soft slay. In my third position, I guess, is Darlene Mitchell, who is playing shoplifting Karen. This objectively, I think, was the most difficult role of all the choices, because where do you go with this? You start the scene post-theft and are trying to leave the store. And Rue talked about the I want situation during walkthroughs. What is it that you want that you're trying to get? And that's what's gonna motivate your character to move forward. The setup of this is objectively hard to pull off, I think, because your motivations are not quite shown on why you're stealing what you're stealing. It's, I gotta get out of here now. I liked her route of going religious and being in that godly type character, saying that only God knows what she did, getting on her knees and praying. What I do think was missing was that entitlement that a lot of Christian women have. And I grew up in the church, so I am very familiar with what that looks like, especially when they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing. Like, you tell them, well, shouldn't you not be wearing mixed prints? And then they say, yeah, well, homosexuality is a sin and we're supposed to love the sinner but hate the sin. And they totally curve it into another direction to make you seem like the problem. If she wanted to push it, she should have called out Rue for flamboyancy and started talking about that and leaned in on those straw man comparisons. Rue was tossing gold at Darlene. She was getting her so involved in that set, but I think ultimately Rue took over the scene and Rue was having way more fun than Darlene was. I think Darlene was sort of lost in the mix of all of that and was sort of just there. She was a straight man to Rue. And then for Darlene's wholesome to fulsome, she's playing this housewife who goes to Folsom but is actually a yellow hanky kind of a person. I live. The rhinestoned urine was a great detail. I love that it was a tank top and Daisy Dukes because that is very Folsom chic. But the reveal happened a little too quickly. In a reveal runway, no matter what the theme is, you need to luxuriate in the drama of your transformation. And so many queens seem repulsed by lingering in that first outfit. Like, for me, you should make it to the head of the runway before you start tearing off. But they will oftentimes immediately turn that corner and they're ripping off their whatever they've got. For me, it's a soft slay. I liked both parts of it. I thought they made sense together. I just didn't like how quick it all happened. In my fourth position, sadly, is Nani Coco. She is playing HOA Karen, and I think this was the most fun skit out of all of them. And she dropped the ball so hard. She started on fire. The mouth breathing I thought was funny. The subtle facial articulation, I love that tapping. on the clipboard. I immediately in my mind was thinking Jenny Lorenzo's skits where she's got the HOA abuela, but sadly Nini just went nowhere by the end. What would have been brilliant, I said brilliant, would be if she started out the initial conversation of these are the rules, you have to take this down, and do the talking down like you're an elementary teacher talking to a child. The rules are that you are not allowed to have these, so we're gonna have to take these down. And since you haven't done it, I've sent you so many letters already, I'm gonna do it myself. And then start manically taking everything off the walls, because let me tell you, when she stopped and punted that ornament, I cackled, like scream laughed. This particular script, I think, required a bit of mania. Rue is in elf ears for Christ's sake, and I think she could have gotten away with being sort of manic with ripping everything off the walls and then stopping and turning to Rue and being very poised and composed and talking to her like a child. The reason I have to do this is because you didn't listen to me. A lot of head nodding and all that. This is where you go crazy. And then for her wholesome to fulsome runway, she was initially the Statue of Liberty, that beautiful copper color, and then goes to this oxidized copper, slutty, kinky fetish storyline. I enjoyed the colors because it did look like the aging of copper. I like the commentary of it all, and I think especially in this current political climate, making any commentary about the United States or the imagery of the Statue of Liberty, I think is impactful. It just doesn't do anything for me fashion-wise, so it's a soft chop, I think. And in my final position is Jane Don't. If you told me in week 1 that Jane was gonna go home in an improv challenge, I would have called you a liar to your face and I would have immediately blocked you. Cause how did this happen? Going to my point earlier, that the editors did not know what to do with this season, they fumbled hard on Jane's story. They gave us this random out of left field storyline that she was afraid to slay, that she didn't want to put a target on her back, that she didn't want the other girls to be coming for her. That went nowhere, and then represented itself as pressure snapping her in half. They primed us completely wrong for this story. The editor's job is to look at where they end up in the competition and tell a story that makes sense from there. And they gave us all of these random stories that never eventually led to what her downfall would be. It's not even that she got in her own way like she did in the first half of the season, because you couldn't interpret this whole situation as her getting in her own way. It was quite literally that she didn't have the references for this challenge. She said she doesn't watch these kind of videos. This is not in her repertoire, and she just wasn't set up for success in the challenge based on what her own skill set was. And so it doesn't even follow through with her getting in her own head, because that's not what happened here. It wasn't that her bottom placement from last week got in her way, because she was totally confident throughout the entire week. Even in the puppet challenge where she bombed, she was still smiling through it and was trying her best to sell confidence. Narratively, this did not make sense with her overall story, and the editors did a bad job with helping us understand how she got to this point. Her role is late for the flight Karen, which could have been absolutely hysterical. Those ladies throw down at the airport. I have seen so many videos. And while I initially found her Kennedy Davenport makeup smock look to be kind of hilarious, the look didn't carry her through the scene. She was tumbling on her words a lot. She couldn't really find her footing. She kept losing focus. I think Rue was really huge in this scene, and Jane couldn't quite keep up with her. It's not Rue's fault at all, but I think maybe Jane dimmed her own light in order to let Rue be funny. But that wasn't even a part of her narrative. Girl, I don't get it. And I don't think it's her fault for not having cringe content in her back pocket. Not everyone gets off to that. Why Rue does but hates cringe queens like Jan is beyond me. And then for her from wholesome to fulsome look, Jane, not Jan. She's playing this widow with the smallest Bed Bath & Beyond candle ever. I like that she played with the hot wax on her breastplate, but what was that first look? They were two completely unrelated looks to me. They had very little through line. For me, someone is gonna type in the comments, it all makes sense because if you read this book from 1993 that was written by this random deep cut author, I can't believe you don't know who they are. It always happens every week. And this wig was so, I have this Bette Midler Sanderson sister wig and I wanna wear it on Drag Race vibe to me. I will give her credit though, because I did not think that she could be this slutty and sultry. So it's a soft slay for what she accomplished, but that first look, chop. I think the tiredness did finally catch up to her. I don't think she was able to connect with this challenge, and because I think she was sort of just exhausted, I don't think she was able to find some kind of inspiration inside of her to push, and that's upsetting. It's a complete gag that she went home this close to the end, and the fandom is going to feel shockwaves. Some of y'all are pissed because I'm seeing comments on Twitter, I'm seeing comments on Bluesky, I'm seeing stuff on Instagram, but that Rusical curse is pervasive, and if Shay couldn't beat it, if Jane couldn't beat it, nobody in the US season is gonna break that curse. Mikey is called as the winner of the challenge, which again I wholeheartedly disagreed with. I think this was Juicy's win week. And the bottom two are called as Jane and Nani and have to lip sync to Lady Gaga's Garden of Eden. A banger of a song, by the way. Oddly current and modern for all of the older songs they've been getting up until now. I would have loved if they had gotten Total Eclipse of the Heart and then maybe Garden of Eden had gone a couple episodes ago. I think that would have been fierce. I think Jane was smart to play into her strengths, which was to just have power and poise rather than do a lot of tricks, because that's not her vibe. Nani was leaning into the dancing and she was sharp, she was kinetic. I think all of her tricks were well timed, but nothing was unnecessary to me. That cartwheel into the backflip, sticking that landing in heels, yo, that was sick. And there are gonna be people who are gonna say, not every lip sync needs cartwheels. Let a Gaga lip sync you do that. Nani is called safe, and I completely agree based on the lip sync. But if we're looking at overall track record, it should have been Jane moving forward, because I think maybe she's got more to give. I've said it before and I'll say it again, I don't know who Nani is. She has had such a weak edit. I think they're maybe priming her to be an underdog player, but like, what is she bringing? Other than she won the first challenge, and usually the winner of week 1 goes all the way to the finale. But it's okay to break that every now and again. They gave Morgan a win and then cut her. I think they did this honestly to piss y'all off. That's why they did this. They're trying to get the fandom activated, they're trying to get them talking so that they can get another Emmy. They are looking for gag-worthy moments, but this was not the way to do that. And the editors and the producers can't keep getting away with this. They are going to hemorrhage their fan base so badly with the decisions that they're making. This is like how they put so much energy into making Orange Bracket great, but then by the time that they got to Purple Bracket, they just showed all their cards and were like, we don't really care, we're just here to crown Ginger. And in the beginning of this season, I think they tried to show that they weren't meddling as much, but it is just as produced as it ever has been. And I think they're showing their cards now that we're getting to the end, they're sort of seeing the light. And I said it a couple of weeks ago, I think they're in a rush to get this season done. They are so ready to move on to queens that are going to be in All Stars 11. They're so ready to cast a bunch of comedy and impersonator queens. They're ready for a different pace, because I think this group, it was a little too slow for them. And that's a bummer, because this could have been like a Belgique or a France 1. This could have been a chill vibe season, and it just wasn't that. But it's not the queen's fault. It's producer's fault. And next week is a frustrating challenge because they're gonna be doing a top 4 acting challenge in a talk show. I hate talk show semifinal challenges. I find them annoying. I find them completely unnecessary. Just give us a top 4 like they used to do. Give us next week a lip sync Lollapalooza and then do a proper sit down reunion and then give us the finale. Like, that would have been more sufficient. And if they really needed to do a lip sync for your life at the reunion and cut someone from that, that maybe would have been better than stringing them through what's going to be an extremely uncomfortable challenge, probably and only to eliminate Juicy. If she didn't win this week or last week, she's not gonna win anything else. She's probably gonna sweep the Lollapalooza, I'm certain. However, I read that it's gonna be all RuPaul songs. All the respect and energy they gave to Global All-Stars. So if that's the case, I don't know if I'm even gonna watch, because I like the Lollapaloozas to see what songs they pull. And if it's just a bunch of RuPaul cuts, I don't care about that. What'd y'all think about this episode? I can't wait to see what y'all are gonna say, because I already can feel what it's gonna be. Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to check out the Patreon if you want ad-free early viewing of all of these reviews. I will see y'all on the flip.